But I think for evangelicals, a lot of this is a recovery of stuff that's historically been part of the church, but has not, at least in the last 30 to 50 years, been part of evangelicalism. You can go to believe it's 1947, Carl Henry wrote this book called The Uneasy Conscience of American Fundamentalism, and by fundamentalism he meant what we understand now as evangelicals. And he was a major evangelical theologian in the 20th century, and in 1947 he was saying we've lost that social impact. And so it did nothing but go downhill from there, essentially, through, in terms of becoming more individualized and separated from communities. So in a lot of ways, what I find fascinating are the terminology of these movements is essentially Catholic terminology. Catholics have a theology that encourages people to be, there's a social theology that Catholics have. There's a social theology that African American Church has. There has not historically been, at least in the last 30 to 50 years, an evangelical social theology. There's been efforts at it, and there's been small groups that have been trying to do it, but there's not an overarching kind of evangelical theology that empowers people to go out and so essentially they view it as part of their spiritual calling. And so it has to be recreated in these different sorts of ways. I think that's a value of movements like this. Whether it becomes mainstream, it can break into this kind of consumer-oriented kind of world, I don't know, but certainly there are pockets of it across evangelicalism that express themselves in this kind of new monasticism, but also in ways that wouldn't label themselves as such, but they're like these groups I mentioned that are incredibly community-oriented, that are, most of these congregations that we've been seeing are not only multi-ethnic by design and by desire, but they're also multi-class. I think as hard as multi-ethnic is to pull off, multi-class is much harder to pull off. And so, but that's where they see themselves, and that's where they see their mission. And it's a part of this larger, quote, missional kind of approach where you are out doing things in community.